Everybody, welcome back to the show. So it was a good episode. I'm not trying to be overly negative or nothing. Good episode. It was very suspenseful. So they changed a couple things up, which I appreciate. However, I still think it was a little too early to get rid of Joel. I mean, it's not great either way. The game kind of disrespected him, but at least in the show, they did a little more explanation. She actually explained why she was pissed, which I appreciate. Joel should have definitely at least attempted to say why he was in the hospital. That would be my only criticism. I needed more build up for this. Um, as an author myself, I prefer to build up to things, not just have them just randomly happen. It was still executed well, I think. Um, Abigail feels like more of a well-rounded character now. You understand the motivation more, which I was concerned about with the first episode, the way they opened it. I think that should have been the way this one opened I think should have been last week's opening. Like right from the get go, we should have known what motivations were. It's just like, oh, we find Joe, we're gonna kill him slow. How the hell she know his name? It's like he didn't go into that room and say, hey, by the way, my name's Joel Miller. And I want to kill this doctor and take this kid out of here for the more firefighters show up or whatever. Like, come on, man. It's just so sloppy the way to do it. And still, we still feel like got a punch to the gut. So the impact of Joel being killed worked again. But I think they could have pushed it back a little bit further. I don't. I think we could have got a little more build up. That's my main thing. So we a little more of a foundation. Yeah, just I don't know. I'm kind of curious now what they're gonna do with season three because a guy like Bella Ramsey as Ellie, at least does a pretty solid job with the character. Don't know if she can carry the show. Don't know if she can do it. Though I don't think she would have been cast if she couldn't do it. But I'm a little nervous about that. Performance has been pretty good. And just yeah.
And biggest bombshells of the series, the death of a beloved character, Joel.
Wait, what?
Shock. People who've played the game, they've been bracing for this. They've been one step ahead of a lot of people who haven't been familiar with this story. Let's just dive straight into that.
Well, they've been one step ahead in that they understood it was going to happen. I don't think that anyone knew exactly when it would happen.
Although some people doubted it.
That it
Right,
would happen.
we did see some people say, "Oh, Pedro's too popular. HBO will not let them."
Yeah, HBO, the place that made Game of Thrones, when Ned Stark gets his head lopped off. I'm still reeling from that. I mean, first of all, let's just all take a big deep breath because that was a lot.
Yeah.
The episode is a lot. There is this massive attack on Jackson. People's lives are in danger. It is absolute mayhem. And also, there is this brutal moment that ends with Bella both terrifying you and breaking your heart at the same time. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of people having seen the episode, are a bit shaken, and reasonably so. It is a big thing we've asked the audience to swallow. It is going to upset a lot of people, and that's okay. And they may be angry about it, and they may be confused about it, and they may be miserable about it. But I'm hoping that for the majority of them, they are going to reconnect now with who's left behind and what happens now. Because what happens now is one unstoppable force meeting another.
Do you feel like there is this unspoken expectation now from the audience? You have to set the bar of catastrophe and tragedy so high that you have to continually chase that. Was that what compelled you to follow through with this act that obviously happened in the game, but to do it as early as you did, to not change the timeline? What brought you to making this decision?
Well, the easy part was the source material was correct. I remember playing it and experiencing it and feeling horrible. But there is that difference between experiencing something and feeling horrible because you loved somebody and you're grieving for the loss of that person. And you're shocked that the story would be so dangerous as to kill that person. And a different response, which is a critical, I don't think that was a good choice. I thought it was a brilliant choice. I thought it was incredibly brave. And I thought it was really smart. Because in the end, you have to take plot armor away at some point. And if you're going to tell a story about consequences, and if you're going to tell a story about a man who does a terrible, terrible thing for the best possible reason there is, then you need the world to provide feedback. And the feedback here is brutality. That's how the world works. So there was never a question that we were going to do this. The real question was when. And we talked about this a lot. And it felt to us like episode 1 really taught us a lot about where Joel was and what his relationship was like with Ellie. And it doesn't end well. And here we get to episode 2, and this happens, and you feel this double destruction because, as far as we know, her relationship with Joel was broken, and now she's forced to watch him die. And it's like a double wound to the heart.
I remember the first time you, Neil, talked to me about bringing this plot point in. We were in London. We were standing outside the after party of an award show. And you said, so I have an idea for part 2. And in your very Neil way, said, so Joel dies. And I remember being...
I like that. Like he was setting you up for like a more interesting second part of that sentence.
Clearly this happened.
Yeah.
And I, like a lot of people, had to process that. And that was something that was processed through not only hearing from you the first time, but then also seeing the script and then shooting the scene and then playing the game. What was it like for you coming from making the game, obviously, and knowing that this is coming, seeing how we're going to adapt? Like we've talked about so many times, how do we adapt these key important events and these characters into this thing? But what was it like for you revisiting this from a different perspective?
The whole thing is so surreal. I don't even know how to quite get into it. You know, there's something worth noting that when we made game 1, we didn't know there was going to be a game 2. So there was a long search to even find that storyline. How do you continue the story about love when, you know, if you just kind of examine season 1 or game 1, it's like we go kind of like to the end of like the kind of sacrifices people would make for love. But it felt like there's somewhere further to still go, which is the idea of justice. There's something I really enjoy of working with Craig and working with everybody else on this show and just seeing how they've interpreted the game. I loved making that game so much, even though it's dark subject matter and, you know, you have to hurt the characters you really love. But that's sometimes my favorite thing as a writer, is to be cruel to the characters.
Well, the world is cruel.
Yeah. But it's also, you get to see who they are and who are the people are around them based on these things that happen. It wasn't chasing some shock value. It's what the story needed. But I just really enjoyed doing this deeper dive. And like one of the things that we couldn't do in the game, and it was one of our earliest conversations of how we're going to achieve this moment. In the game, we talk about things happen to Jackson. There are certain attacks, whether it's infected or raiders, but we never get to see it. Here, because we're not playing any one particular character, you could jump between this attack on Jackson and this situation that Joel found himself in. And then again, showing the kind of loss you could experience in this world, both on a very personal, intimate level and on a community level. And that is something that we'll visit again in this season.
So much of this really started with the impetus of, you told me this once, what do I look like if this were to happen to me? What do I look like if I were to lose my daughter? So much of this is you as the main character. And I think for all of us that are experiencing this, we get to see ourselves as Joel. We get to see ourselves as Ellie. And with this season, we will also get to see ourselves as Abby. Let's talk about Abby a little bit. We open up with this dream sequence where we watch Abby witness the aftermath of the hospital scene, the massacre that takes place in Salt Lake. And we learn a little bit more about what's driving her.
Don't go in there. Stop it. I'm telling you, go back. No.
Going to make this so much more grievous to her. And she can't. And you get the feeling that this is not the first time she's tried to tell herself, don't walk in that room. But what she sees in there is horrible. When Joel shoots this man in the head, it is not a fun moment to watch. It is not a rooting moment as far as I'm concerned. In season 1, when he does that, that is when we feel he's really just disconnected himself from any kind of sense of belonging to society or civilization. He is solely about getting Ellie out of there. He doesn't care what he does or who he hurts. And now this 19-year-old girl is wandering in there, who at that point is the same age that Ellie is right now, and sees him on the floor and sees that wound. There is a reason in season 1 we showed him on the floor. We could have easily just stayed with Joel after he shoots him in the head, but we saw that's the last thing in the room that we see, because that's what Abby's going to see. And that tearing away can't be undone, no matter how much she tries while she sleeps to do it.
Well, there's something about grief plus injustice that is driving her a little mad, where it's like, right, it's infecting even her dreams. It's a sort of infection.
After watching the episode, I'm wrestling with it. I guess in some way, kind of like what Abby's experiencing, there's the event that I've witnessed, and now there is the experiencing, the processing of that event. And even just hearing what you said, something that I think I've glossed over, don't go in there.
Don't go in there.
His brains are on the floor.
Very graphic. And one thing that we were able to do is have Abby be very explicit in her confrontation with Joel about what she saw, to confront him with what he did.
Do you know how many you killed that day? Did you?
Who is, people may know him from Succession, and here he is doing this brilliant job with these actors in these little moments where Abby says, we have a code, and the code is not to hurt people who can't defend themselves. And that's you right now, but I am going to kill you, because everyone agrees that some things are just wrong. And Joel gives the slightest nod, because he is acknowledging that what he did was capital W wrong, but also we understand he didn't care, and he still doesn't care. It doesn't matter. So yes, does he deserve to die by the rules of the universe? Sure.
Neil, you've said something before to where one of the reasons why people have struggled with this is because it's not fair, it's not right. Or even more so, someone goes, well, no, I get it. That's what Joel deserves. But you said that's not how this world operates.
Well, it's like, we're so, I think, used to certain narrative structures, especially like Hollywood movies, where there's like a karmic justice. It's interesting, you hear Craig talk about it, he's like, you're not rooting for Joel, but I know many of our audience do. And me watching the show, actually, I am rooting for Joel. I am
even when he shoots that guy in the head.
Even when he shoots that guy.
Wow.
Well, in a way,
Dark, I love
because I've often, right, and then making the story, I would think about what I wish I could do in Joel's position. And I wish I could act like Joel and save my daughter in that whatever it takes. And I would try to do whatever it takes.
Would I be strong enough to take myself to the extremity of my humanity for the purpose of saving her?
But then the thing that we almost never get to see is like, okay, what about the other side? What about the doctor that is trying to save the world? And what about everybody that's close to him? Again, we just tend to paint these characters as good guys and bad guys, and they're just survivors. They're just, each person has their own motivation, and their heart is kind of in the right place, right? Joel's trying to save Ellie. This doctor is trying to save the world, and Abby feels like an injustice has been done, and it must be corrected for the world to feel right.
Yeah, there's a lot of people talk about the trolley problem, the famous moral conundrum. And what I find interesting about these characters, at least when I'm sitting down at the keyboard and working out a scene, is that they don't have the trolley problem. It's not a problem for them at all. Nobody seems to be wrestling with what to do. Joel's a very clear goal. Oh, the trolley can either hit all those people or your kid. Not a problem.
Yeah.
Send him to all the people. Abby has dragged this group of friends all the way from Seattle back here, putting them all in terrible danger, putting herself in terrible danger to do this. Not a trolley problem for her at all. So there is a moral clarity here where people are making their own systems of values and sticking to them in extremely hard ways. And the challenge that everyone is going to have is the challenge that Joel faces right here as someone is hitting him in his wounded knee with a golf club. And that is, does it work in the end? Does this method of pursuing my own value system actually work? Would it not be better if I could have somehow figured out how to grow old and be Ellie's, grandfatherly figure? Could I not see her become, a 50-year-old person? I don't get that because of what I've done. They're all going to pay a price. So the question that we've seeded in here is, how do you win?
And it's also important to note here that Abby could have just shot Joel and it would have been over. But that wouldn't have been enough for her because she had felt all this intense pain for all these years. Somehow, and I think we all do this to some degree, when someone wrongs us, when someone cuts us off on the highway, we have to make the other person pay in as much, if not more so.
And it's a great point. If she just shoots him and they leave, Ellie gets there too late. She never knows who did it.
Right. But now she's witnessed it.
Yeah.
For me, as someone who knows what's coming, the one thing you still manage to do in that scene with Joel, leading up to it, Owen says, when asked, what's the plan? He says, the plan is to talk her out of this and to go back. You gave me hope that maybe what she set out to do, she wouldn't achieve. And then there's a moment, Bella's performance is so powerful that for a second, because she believed, I believed, Joel was going to stand up, brush himself off.
Yeah. That's the hardest moment, is when she's begging him to get up and he tries.
Don't get up.
People say, oh, when you have a kid, you experience this new stuff. And a lot of people are like, I think I can extrapolate. You can't. You just can't. I couldn't. I didn't know until I knew. And that is pure parental, desperate love. He's trying to pick himself up for her, even though he can't even move. And what Bella does here, I mean, it's the full range of things, and it is all brutally heartfelt, in part because I think she and Pedro, too, are very close and are so intertwined, in their own lives. I mean, Pedro said this beautiful thing to Bella when we were wrapping season 1. He said, it's so strange how this life-changing thing came along so late for me and so early for you. But they share it. So a lot of this is overlapped, I think, with who they are as people, too. I remember we walked over, Mark Mylod and I walked over, we're sitting on the floor with Bella, and we said, listen, there's this moment where you're going to have to shift from the most brutal grief to savagery. We want you to terrify us with the resolve that you have to murder these people, because Ellie has this catalytic change from fear and grief to anger that is so rapid and so frightening. And she does it.
Please don't. Please don't.
One thing I have to say, this is coming on the heels of the game where you, Troy, played Joel. You had to die in this very similar way. Ashley Johnson played Ellie, and she had to react in this very similar way. And, we talk about, well, how do we feel about making this? I assume, Craig, you share this, but I have a nervousness of like, especially for the really important scenes that you guys did so well, Troy, that they won't live up to it, that somehow will fall short in the retelling of the story. And I remember when I talked to Mark, I had a Zoom call with him before he was directing this episode, and I'm like, dude, man, you got this giant battle in front of you, and like there's freaking bloaters and infected and explosions. Like, man, just the prep for that must be like unnerving. He's like, yeah, that's all true. But I'll be honest with you, Neil, the thing I'm most nervous for is this death. Because I watched that part of the game and it's like I saw the weight of it and I'm like, I have to do this justice. And he said like it was keeping him up at night. And I got to give everybody their credit. They did it justice.
Before this tragic event, we really get a chance to spend some time with Ellie and find out how she feels about Joel and where she's at with that relationship.
Well, it's a bit of a mystery because the night before, she told him she didn't need his help. She rejected him. She came home. She saw him on the porch. She walked right by him, didn't say a word, cold as ice. It's the next morning. And what she says to Jesse is, no offense, I think I'm just going to go on patrol with Joel. She wants to go on patrol with Joel. What has happened? And when Jesse pushes on her, she kind of explodes.
No offense, man. I'm going to do my patrol with Joel. And we
Just, I didn't talk to you last night when you were on the porch. There's more. We just don't know what it is yet.
We've talked about the tragedy on the micro level, the one that's very personal, this tragedy that befalls not only Joel, but also Ellie. But that is mirrored by the huge, epic tragedy that's happening. The day that we feared, the day that we've been preparing for is finally here. When we hear that bell,
Yeah.
it's coming. The storm is here. Let's talk about just envisioning what that looks like. You have this opportunity to delve deeper into what happens to the community, what happens to Jackson. Where did that start?
Well, we began by asking questions because I'm the pesky question guy. How do they defend themselves? What do they have other than a wall? What could they have other than a wall? What would their method be? Surely they've sat there and thought, okay, if raiders come, we do this. If a horde comes, we do this. So they have a plan. But what is it? And how can it be something that is a bit surprising to us, but also once we get over the surprise, we think, oh yeah, of course, that's smart. That's a good idea. And in that way, we created the plan. And the plan almost works until a bloater shows up, which is sort of the way life is, right? Everything's going fine until a bloater shows up. And then the madness begins.
So walking through kind of like the beat by beat of this, you're going to have that big, huge, epic battle. We saw it in season 1 where literally, I think as you put it, the ground was vomiting
Yeah.
the infected. Here you have it as well. It starts with this, to me, it was such a brutal imagery of here comes the horde as they're charging the gates of Jackson and they just purposefully slam themselves up against. What was the discussion like as you're envisioning what this attack would look like? What were the key elements to you? And what was it like seeing that thing actually come into fruition on screen?
I remember we talked a lot about numbers because, season 1, we have this opening and then we jump and everything's already destroyed. The army's gone. Like all these things have happened. So, it could get really bad, but we've never seen it really, really bad. And here there was an opportunity to say, okay, when you saw one clicker, how dangerous that was in season 1, when you saw one bloater, how dangerous that was in season 1, now what happens when you multiply that by some crazy number? And that's what they have to try to defend. And to a large degree, they fail because many, many people die.
The town remains at the end. We understand as Maria and Tommy are embracing and sort of emotionally collapsing that the battle is over, but at great cost. There needs to be a reckoning like, Neil is saying, with the reality of the world. In season 1, let's just talk practically for a second. We were figuring out how to do it all while we were doing it. A little bit like building a plane in the air. This season, we knew more and we understood a little bit better about how to do it. Mark did a kind of amazing job working with Alex Wong, our visual effects supervisor, to create previs for the entire battle. I mean, the whole thing was mapped out very, very carefully and then budgeted very, very carefully. It was prepped and shot like its own movie. I can't remember the total number of days, but movie length days. Movie length in terms of schedule. The prep was very long. It's fascinating to see how these things work. You build them with large swaths of blue out there that you know will be a thing. And then even now as we speak, because we recorded this quite a bit before the show airs, we are still working with Weta and DNEG. Weta does all the creature stuff. So Weta is creating, we've mixed stunt people in with CG people. And as I review, a lot of times I'll
Can't
go,
tell.
is that one of yours or one of ours?
Yeah.
Because that guy's running weird. And turns out I was one of ours. It's real. So we can't change it. But that's what Weta is doing. And now suddenly it's there. The dream happens rather late in the process. So you have faith that it's all going to work. It's hard work.
It's also worth noting that, you have a lot of theories of how it should play out.
Yes.
And often they prove out wrong, or like you see first pass of something like, oh man, the bloater feels like the Incredible Hulk. Like that's incorrect. And we will start talking about, okay, what would make it feel even more believable? Even because the more believable it feels, the more you care about the stakes and the characters. And then there's even stuff in the editorial where like, okay, how do we show the stakes of the kids in this town?
Right.
And stuff was added later. And I even I love the way just Tommy and Maria look at each other. And again, in the humanity of it all, every life here is important, but for Tommy, one life is more important than the other ones.
In the end, we always try and capture not just a relationship inside of these moments, but a change. Because there's something that Tommy does here with Maria that he never had a chance to do. She's shooting at this bloater who looks up at her, goes, someone's shooting me from there. I'm going to go find you. And he says, no, chase after me.
Chase after me.
And that is new information. That is something Maria didn't know would happen. She may have hoped. It may have been a nice theory, but
sure, you never know what your partner will do in that situation until you see him. As like he was just met with, there's the brigade of we're the fire people, and what happens to two of them? They ducktail and run.
absolutely
I'm out of here.
which is that would happen.
Absolutely,
I would be one of those guys.
I don't look at them as cowards.
No,
there is something
they're people
genetically inside of me that goes, you're no longer in control. I'm going to take you out of this. And to have that, then there's a lot of mirroring, and I'm already picking up on something that I believe is intentional, which is the duality of everything. The duality of, we see that cowardice is put on display, and we see heroism that is the pendulum swinging to the other side.
We don't chase stakes. At some point, I know in movies you eventually have to protect the entire galaxy. It's not enough to, save your town. But for us, the stakes are the people and the relationships. And if we feel those, and if those are threatened, you can have an entire town under attack by waves of infected. But if you don't have Maria and Tommy looking at each other, and Tommy trying to save her, and her saving him, then, it's just a fight.
We see these monsters that are attacking the big town and the big community. We also see the monster that's attacking one person.
And let's stop for a moment and talk about the monsters as heroes of their story, because they're the most selfless. They're the most about community. They sacrifice each other willy-nilly to protect the people behind them, the way that ants work. They are more cohesive, more collected, and more unified than people are. And that's, to me, its own fascinating thing. There's a reason cordyceps took over the world. They're better at it than we are. So we've created this little enclave to hide. Well, they're going to try and get in anyway. But when you have a battle that is this big, with this many people, you do crave a moment where it focuses down to two of them, where everything shrinks down to one act of desperation and one moment where a person faces death in the eye in a personal way. So there's that moment in Saving Private Ryan where one soldier is being slowly stabbed to death by another. And it is this very personal, intimate act of violence that is so lonely and quiet as compared to the noise and chaos of war. And I thought it was important to see Tommy face death that way.
That is just as visceral a moment, if not more, than the way that that movie starts off, by the way, which is a good parallel to this. You have this huge attack, the faceless horde that is attacking the faceless community for most part. And then you make it personal by putting the lens on two specific people, which very much reflects what's happening up the mountain.
Yes.
I mean, you're right, Troy, in that, right, all these people, right, Tommy is putting himself in harm's way for someone he loves. Ellie is putting herself in harm's way for someone she loves. And even Abby is putting herself in harm's way for someone she has loved and lost. Right? It's all a function of love. It just has different outcomes.
In between the two events of Joel's death and the attack on Jackson is another incredibly epic event where Abby finds herself in the midst of this snowy graveyard. Where did that idea come up?
Well,
Both of you gestured.
I gestured to Neil because it comes from the game. I mean, there's this great moment in the game. We really just expanded on this small moment. You're playing as Abby and you come across frozen bodies, and it's scary, in part because you're not sure why are all these bodies here. And we expanded on this and had set up a little bit of a discussion, even all the way back one episode prior. Maria's got a hunch. She's got a feeling. And they've already heard, as we hear from Jesse in the beginning of the episode, people have found infected that are now alive, hibernating or keeping warm underneath a layer of frozen infected, covered by snow. So they're not sure how many of them are out there. Could be 30, could be 1,000 is what Jesse says. And of course, Ellie's like, 1,000. Right, sure. Well, Abby finds them, and her arrival triggers some movement under the snow, and then out they come.
An avalanche of infected.
Yes, and I love working on those shots with Weta because one of the things they're really good at, and I always ask for this, is the first instinct is they pour out and they run down the hill. And my first instinct is they pour out and start falling. They run into each other. They lose their footing. There's no careful planning or thought. These are not stalkers. And so there's a messiness to it, and a brutality, and again, a total lack of concern for each other. It's all about getting that one. And it leads to a sequence that we really looked for fidelity to the game. And that is when Abby gets into this mining plant and that fence goes in.
That is one of the most tense moments. Again, I love my experience because, of course, in the game, I remember this, and it is so claustrophobic and oppressive.
Mm.
And one of my favorite shots is the infected putting so much force into his hand, he's driving his hand through the chain link fence.
Yeah, there's something wrong with us.
Well, there's something about that fence sequence as well, because we had a scene when Joel's escaping with Sarah in season 1 that was kind of inspired by that same sequence. And now there's again, it's a kind of like history repeating itself. It's here, but this was one of those sequences that I would pull people into my office at Naughty Dog and be like, check this out. And they're like, oh my God, you guys did it just like they were so excited to see their work again recreated in the TV show.
Yeah, that was that's an easy one, right? Like part of the fun of this for me is that as many questions as I ask and as many levers as I, play around with, and I'll say, Neil, what if we do this? Or what if we do this? Or here's a crazy idea. There are some things where it's just full clarity. Oh, we're doing that. And we don't need to screw it. I mean, it's gorgeous.
So I agree with a lot of what he's saying. I do think this puts the show in an interesting predicament going forward. Yeah, I don't know what they're expecting to do with the rest of the series, especially season 3. This is supposed to be split in 2 seasons, remember? This season only has 7 episodes. It's all already gone. I mean, if it was me, I would have pushed it back to at least the finale. At least. I guess they figured they might probably do more stuff with WLF and their crazy bow people. But like, I still think we just lost a critical character in the show that we could have built up a little bit more. And again, they changed a couple of things, like Abigail actually explaining why she's pissed, which I kind of like. So they don't give me that in the game. That's why it was so many people were so like pissed. I'm like, who the hell is this broad that just came out of nowhere and murdered Joel? And again, if I was the one thing I would change is I would say that Joel should at least mention the fact of why he was in the hospital. Like, I was supposed to know what they're freaking about. I'm like, yeah, he was there to save his surrogate daughter who was about to be murdered by her crazy father, who somehow became a doctor thinking that he had to murder the one person that's immune instead of taking a DNA sample. I don't know about the rest of y'all. It sounds like he should have stayed in medical school because only an idiot would think that that's the only conclusion you have. We're going to save the world. Think about the future. This is our future. All the lives we're going to save. Like, how are you going to save lives if you kill the one person that is actually immune? But like, I don't know. I'm conflicted. Play the games. I'm conflicted. I really am. I mean, it's kind of different when you're actually experiencing the game as Ellie, whereas with this, I suppose, of course, they have to do it differently in the show, naturally, but I don't know. I'm conflicted. I really am. I was just about to buy the season pass for this too, thinking like, hey, maybe they'll push this off to at least the finale, so I get some other exciting episodes before they do it. This thing I literally did. I still can't believe I actually did it in this episode. I still can't believe it. And that last shot of Abigail walking away with her annoying minions, like they were never there in the first place. Like the way they ambushed him was very military. It's like when they actually had a conversation before they murdered him. Like they look like raiders to you? Like, no, military. Yeah, exactly. Ambush them like a prisoner of war, walk away like they were never there. And the blizzard will cover their tracks. No one's gonna be looking for 5 strangers in the wilderness. I mean, it would have been tougher for them if they were actually in the city. And they infected invasion was perfect cover outside of the blizzard. The Jackson's all the way down the hill, and they were all the way up in the mountains. I still think they could have made it back to the city, but then, they had freaking horses. I mean, it's one thing if you're on foot, but if you got horses, come on. I just thought that was just a little sloppy. Like, I know how the game goes. I'm just saying, but sure, they could have done a little bit more of a twist, But yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. I just we need some time to think about it. So, wow.